Now that we have Atom set up, let's take a moment to look at your workflow for working with files in Atom and also look at some of the advantages of working in a code editor. You can see here I'm starting off on a Mac system, and I'll switch over to Windows as necessary, but most of the things we're going to be doing from this point forward are going to be the same for both Mac and Windows. All right, now the first thing I want to do is I want to start with a new blank file so I can start writing some code. So I'm just going to go to File and New File. And to begin with, I'm just going to use some HTML code as our example here. So if you don't know HTML, that's okay. Just follow along with the pattern of what I'm writing. So I'm just going to write, it's called an H1 tag. And it starts with a less than sign, followed by H1, then a greater than sign, then the words hello world. And then you can see the closing tag here is just like the beginning tag. It just has that /. So just copy this. And after we're done typing this, we want to save this file. So I'm going to go to File, Save, just like any other program. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my documents. I'm going to find my WCC repository folder, and I'm going to save this file in here. Now I'm working with HTML here, so this file needs to have a .html extension. So let's call this Atom 101, and I'll say .html. That extension is important because it's going to tell Atom what kind of code we're working with. So atom101.html is a nice clean title. And before I save this, I want you to notice what's going to happen. If you look at my code before I save it, it's all one color. But once I save it, you'll note how the code changed a little bit. It's now it has some color to it. So these H1, the start and the close, is a different color. So what's going on here is now that Atom knows this is a .html file, it can color code it accordingly. So it's going to find patterns within the code and apply colors to it. And this is going to help tremendously as we're looking through the code and we're trying to spot mistakes and keep things organized. Trust me, you'll see what I mean as our files get bigger. Now, the other thing that happened once I saved this file is it opened up the parent directory where I saved it. So the parent directory is WCC. It opened it up in this left panel here called the tree view. And if you don't see that, you can go to View and you can toggle it on and off. So here we go, toggle tree view. So here it is off and here it is on. So this is really useful because when you're working with a code project, you're often working with multiple files at the same time, and they're often in a related directory. So you can keep that accessible here. As we add files, we can quickly access them here. If for some reason you don't see the WCC folder here, let's simulate this. So I'm going to right click it and say remove project folder and say it's not there. I can add it manually. So I can go to File, Add Project Folder, and just locate that WCC folder in my documents. And there it is. So my file's saved, it's set up. The next thing I want to do is I want to be able to preview it in the browser. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink down my Atom window here, and I'm going to open up Chrome. And then I'm going to shrink Chrome over so I can see both of these. All right, so I want to load this HTML file in my browser so that I can actually see how this HTML is rendered. And there's a couple different ways I could do that. I could go to File, Open File. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find it and I'm going to drag it over into Chrome. So I'm going to go into my Finder window, go into Documents, into WCC. There's Atom 101, and just click and drag it into Chrome. And there you go. You can see how this H1 tag is rendered. So now this is where I'm going to be spending most of my time when I'm working on web pages. I've got my code editor here on one side. I can make a change. Let's add an exclamation point, and I'll just save this. And then I go to the browser and refresh, and I see that change. And then that's how I'm going to proceed. I'm going to make changes, preview it, make changes, preview until I get it just how I want. There's no need to close this file in between and reload it. Once you have the files you're working with, leave them open and just refresh as necessary. Just to make sure we're clear, let's now switch to the Windows side, and we can just go through that process again, and we'll see it over on the Windows side and just reiterate. So here I am on Windows, and I'm going to go to File, New File, and I'm going to say H1 Hello World. And it might be a good time right now to actually talk a little bit about font size because it looks a little bit smaller in Windows. So if you go to View in either Mac or Windows, you can find the option to increase your font size. And this is going to be really helpful, especially when you're starting out and you're trying to spot that one little error, that one little quote that you're missing. If your font is super tiny, that's going to be hard to do. So increase and decrease your font size as needed. But here's my hello world. So now we're going to save this. And I go to my documents, find my WCC folder, and once again, I'm going to call it atom101.html and save it. And then I will load up Chrome here. And I'll also bring up my file browser, and it looks like I'm already in my folder, but just to go from the beginning, we'll go to my documents, WCC, there's atom101. And you'll notice on the window side, in the file browser, it doesn't have that .html extension, but it's there, it's just not showing it. Okay, so click and drag and drop, and there we go. There's our changes, and just to show that this is connected, we'll save our changes. So I'll go over here and hit refresh. So you can see that procedure is pretty much the same on Windows and Mac. So let me switch back over to the Mac now, and I want to share a couple tips that are going to help you as you're working on your projects. The first is about your file paths. So right now we just created this file and we directly opened it. So we're pretty confident that the file I'm working on the left matches the file on the right. But sometimes your files are going to get mixed up. Say you have different versions or you're saving them in different locations. And sometimes what happens is you'll be working in a file here and you might make a change, and then you go over to your browser and you try to refresh it and you don't see that change. And that can be very confusing. You don't know if maybe you did something wrong with the code, why isn't it showing up? Oftentimes what's going on is just that you somewhere along the line, you got your wires crossed and you're now working on two different files. So one way to check this and see which files you're working on is just checking the paths. So obviously here in the browser, we can see the path to this file. It's in my documents folder, WCC atom101. So if I found myself in that situation where things weren't matching up, I would want to look at that path, and then over in my code editor, I can just hover over this file and I could see the path according to Atom. And I just want to make sure those two locations are the same, because if they're not, it's going to be very confusing when I'm making my changes. So there's a lot more features within Atom. This is really the tip of the iceberg, but spend a little bit of time working on just the things I showed in this video so you're comfortable with this workflow of going from your code editor to your browser back and forth and seeing those changes.